action.
Welcome to the Rumikay Talks, and today's guest, Sarah Adelman. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much for coming today. It's amazing that you're calling from New York City, one of my favorite places to be, and I'm not there.
I just can't believe you're up at 9 a.m. Pacific time. That's what's crazy to me.
Well, it's not that early. I mean, maybe for New Yorker, I'm not sure, but I try to wake up much earlier than that, but it doesn't work always, unfortunately.
Gotcha. I'm a night owl because of stand-up. So usually if I'm waking up at 10, I'm very impressed with myself.
All right, so let's just dive in. I want to travel back in time to the first moment that you realized that comedy is something that you love to do.
Well, I always secretly wanted to be a comedian, but I thought that wasn't a real job. So I just did a different career instead. And I remember, in like high school or middle school, everyone would have to say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'd always say, I want to be a comedian, but I'm actually going to, do X, Y, and Z. And it wasn't until after COVID when I was in grad school, and I started going to comedy shows. And I started seeing, girls my age doing stand-up. I feel like I was always going to the Comedy Cellar and seeing, these 50-year-old superstars who toured internationally. And then I started going to smaller clubs and saw people, trying new material and maybe not doing so well. And I was like, okay, this could actually be something I could try. So I went to my first ever open mic in the summer of 2020. And I haven't looked back since. I was totally addicted. And yeah, that's sort of how I got started. And then I, comedy sort of ruined my first career. And I sort of took it as a sign from the universe. It was something I was meant to delve into. And I'm sort of treating it like a startup a little bit, like I don't want to be totally delusional. I know, from a million conversations and just, having my head screwed on straight, this can be a very impossible industry. So I'm investing in myself right now, and I will evaluate later on. But as of right now, I'm giving it the old college try.
That's an amazing experience, I think, to be in the science and then join the comedy ranks, so to speak. I guess there is no any particular balance that you have. You're either a comedy or a scientist, or do you combine both anywhere on your journey?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so while I was working as a scientist, I was doing stand-up for 2 years. And then I started, it was coming time to decide if I wanted to apply to PhD programs, which had been my life plan since I was in college. And I really liked the idea of being a doctor. I don't know if I would have loved the day-to-day of it. So as I was deciding, I didn't think I could do both. I didn't think I could invest the time and money into getting a PhD and also pursue comedy. So in an effort to explore that and try to understand where my mind was, I started writing, a couple of short, funny essays, which turned into stand-up that I started doing on stage, which turned into the idea to have a one-woman show, which is now Egg, my one-woman show that I'm touring this year. And that's what I did my Ars Nova residency with. But in an effort to try and workshop Egg and sort of get it on its feet, that is what got me fired from science, was trying to talk about science in stand-up. So I sort of, in an effort to make a choice, had the choice made for me. But I also don't think I would have had the guts to leave science on my own, because I'm pretty type A and a bit of a rule follower, usually. So it was just kind of like this weird tornado of like, I'm trying to do both. It got to a breaking point. It was no longer compatible. So I, gave myself 6 months to try and accomplish a bunch of things, and I accomplished all of them. And that was, a year and a half ago. And I still, I have a part-time job in science that, helps pay the bills. But I'm trying to see if I can make it work now. But a lot of my comedy still does stem from science, or things that I've learned, or sort of my worldview. that I got from that. And then I think the way that it shines most in my work is my solo show, and then in Busted, my short film, which I'm hoping will serve as a proof of concept for a series about a scientist who's also working secretly as a comedian and sort of trying to keep those worlds apart.
That's interesting. Are you writing it right now? Or...
Yeah, I have the pilot, and I have the treatment for the series, and thinking about because I was thinking, I think the big question when it comes to this pilot and this idea is, is the pilot this character getting fired? And that wasn't as exciting to me because I feel like we've seen a comedian trying to make it in New York 100 times on screen. I'm much more interested in showing people, pulling back the curtain behind science and showing how science can actually be really funny and comedy can actually be really serious and not sort of the way that you would originally think. So I'm trying to, at the moment, develop this series where the Sarah character is working as a scientist 9 to 5, and that's secretly doing comedy at night and trying to balance both. And in every episode, one gets in the way of the other. And I can be pretty indecisive. So I think it's sort of a love letter to those types of people.
Yeah. I'm very curious about the initial idea of the show, of the egg. What was the moment when you decided, I'm gonna talk about it in front of everyone, I'm gonna use everything that I've seen and heard and done?
It kind of came from a point, I specifically wasn't talking about it on stage, and all of my comedy friends thought that was crazy. They were like, why are you doing material about dating apps when you could be talking about having this really, really unique experience that no other comedian has had? And I kept saying, I don't want anyone at work to find out. Obviously, that's, what got my ass fired. But I was like, I don't want anyone to find out. I don't want to blend this. I feel like I won't be taken seriously at work. There was like a laundry list of reasons. And I didn't talk about science and comedy for like a full year when I started. And I guess the ambition of wanting to get better at comedy eventually overrode my ambition at my day job, which sort of was like a slow process. I don't remember like one specific moment, but I do remember the first time I ever tried material about working at a sperm bank on stage. And it did better than anything I'd ever written. Not just because it's a funny concept, but I think because people could tell that it was high stakes for me. And I think it could get the audience invested. And everybody also sort of loves to be in on a secret. And I felt like people were sort of rooting for me to keep both of these jobs. And then as I was writing this solo show, which has a lot of stand-up in it, I was like, what is the ending of the show going to be? Because my original iteration, I did a reading a year and a half ago. The initial iteration, it was like, and now I'll have to choose if I want to do science or stand up. And I kept getting this feedback, like, that's the worst ending ever. Like, that's so unsatisfying. And then a month later, I got fired. And I was like, okay, there's the ending.
Well, they must have been guests on your show. Just they find out. Yeah, that's definitely what attracted my attention, this combination of this unique experience that I never had, and then telling the secret, almost like eavesdropping on what's happening there.
Yeah. I felt like, getting fired was definitely the worst day of my life. And I, I felt like I could go two ways. I could either like sue them and try to get my job back and like whatever, or I could say, you know what, this is a truly original, bizarre experience. I am going to try and turn it into something good to also help myself get over the intense shame and embarrassment of like, because I had to go back to the lab and I had to pick up all my stuff. And I mean, it was humiliating. And it was, because I had to, these, HR people made me watch my own material in front of them, which is a lot of what my short film is about. And it was just awful. It was them saying, here's something that I'm so proud of. And they're like, this is disgusting. And it treated me like I was a criminal. And it was just awful. And I felt so much shame about it. So in creating this art out of it has been, at least, even if nothing else comes out of this and, the short film doesn't do well at festivals and no one cares about Egg, like, at least I will have used this to try and move on and process it, which I feel that I have.
Yeah, I just think they don't have sense of humor, that's all.
No. People in science are very robotic. So I had always sort of felt like, you know, a little bit stuck between the two. I always have felt, and I still am, very nerdy and dorky for a comedian. And I felt that I was very like loose tongued for a scientist.
Well, let's talk about this experience, this journey, this tour that you've had so far. New York City, Washington, DC, LA soon. Is there any particular moments or audience's reactions that come to mind that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So in DC, so when I advertise the show in New York, you know, it's a lot of word of mouth because this is where I'm based. But when I go to different cities, I like to reach out to a lot of women in STEM groups at local universities or science, you know, postdoc support groups, stuff like that. So I get a lot of audience members who have never been to a comedy show before, which is really interesting because in New York, you know, when I do my regular stand-up at, you know, the clubs here, which are like my most consistent gigs when you're just, you know, doing 10 minutes on lineup of, you know, 5 to 10 comedians, everyone there tends to be a comedy fan. So it's really interesting and sometimes difficult to perform to people who aren't super familiar with the art form. You know, you kind of have to coach the audience that, you know, it's okay to laugh and, you know, you don't have to be earnest. This isn't theater. Like, you don't have to be polite. It's okay to be sort of raunchy. But I have gotten so many women come up to me after shows and be like, I have never seen comedy about being type A, like being super nerdy, being a perfectionist. Like, I feel like a lot of those qualities are not associated with stand-up comedians. So I sort of feel like just so glad that, you know, and I get emails from people being like, I've never seen stand-up or theater reflective of my experience. So I think that that's been what's most exciting about going on tour is reaching people who come from the medical world, who get to sort of see what the other side of that could be. I think a lot of people who are drawn to science and medicine and, you know, all of these really intense career fields, like being a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, they kind of haven't considered other career paths, just like I hadn't. And a big metaphor I use in Egg in my solo show is being on this conveyor belt and how I felt like when I was a kid, I wanted to be successful. So I got on this conveyor belt and I loved having all of the steps in front of me, like bachelor's, master's, PhD, postdoc. Like that was so soothing to me as an anxious person. And Egg is all about getting thrown off that conveyor belt and having to figure out what to do next. And I've gotten a lot of messages from people saying, you know, I realize now that I've been on this conveyor belt and it might just be inertia. And maybe I do want to do something else. So that's been what's most surprising about going on tour is reaching all of these different science people. I don't know how to drive. So that's definitely been a difficult part of going on tour because I'm a native New Yorker. So none of us ever learn how to drive. But I'm so excited. I'm doing LA, Portland, Seattle, New Hampshire, Boston's in the cards soon. I would love to perform the show for like every single person who works in science. That would be my dream, as long as they have a sense of humor.
Well, that's a great goal. Yeah, definitely. So do you have a driver license at all?
I have a license. I had to rent a zip car to take a test when I was like 19. I failed the test 3 times. I eventually got the license, and then I haven't driven since. And that was, 9 years ago. So, but I only got the license because I didn't like bringing my passport around with me. But if I never have to learn how to drive, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really like. I mean, I like driving. I don't like parking. That's
okay.
Me. That's
Gotcha.
The thing. Yeah.
That was actually the only thing I passed on my driver's test was the parallel parking. I think because I can go so slow.
That's crazy because that's where people usually fail.
I know.
How does the Ars Nova's experience help you to shape your show? What is it at all? Like, what is Ars Nova's program for people who might not know?
So Ars Nova is an off-Broadway theater in New York that has been around, I'm going to say like 50 years, like a really long time. And it's sort of known to be an incubator for really exciting work. So people like Liz Merriweather, who's the showrunner of New Girl, came out of there, and Lin-Manuel Miranda and Jesse Eisenberg, like a lot of great people have worked there, and they do a lot of residencies. So they have a 2-year playwriting residency. They had a 1-year comedy solo show residency. That's what I did. And then they're also just an off-Broadway theater. So sometimes they'll have, runs of productions. It was a huge education for me because I applied to this program, which was super selective. I never thought in a million years I would get in, especially because everyone who was applying had been a theater kid. That's something I'm running into a lot as I'm doing, working more in like the one woman show space, is tend to be the only person that didn't, do choir or be in musicals and plays. Like I'm sort of learning as I go with how to do that. Like I had to Google how to act. Like I'm sort of learning to build the plane as I fly it. Which I think can also be good though, because I feel like I don't have, some specific person in my head. I feel like I don't know. That's been very fun to like have to teach myself how to do all of that. But Ars Nova was great because it was like a real theater. And so it was a year-long residency. We met once a week on Mondays for 3 hours, and it was me and 4 other shows. And everyone basically got a half an hour each week to present something that they had worked on, and then get feedback. And I was the only sort of classic, I was the only stand-up in the group. Everyone else had come from the theater or sketch world or acting world. So it was really cool to see these other types of projects. It really opened my eyes. Like when I originally envisioned Egg, it was like just me and a stool. And through Ars Nova, I kind of learned, how much a lighting cue can change something and how much a sound effect can change something. And I took a clowning class because I felt like I couldn't use my body from my neck down. And now I like know that I can use my feet. Like it was really great. And I got to see all of these other shows that had all of these other elements of theater that I never experienced before. Like there were clowns and there were people from improv and there were people who their shows didn't use words at all. And my show is like super literary and writing heavy. So I just felt like it was a real education. And just in terms of my own self-confidence, like trying to go from the science world to the theater world, you feel like such an imposter because everyone there, has been auditioning for years and they grew up, they were in Annie and Wicked and all of these things. And I'm like, hey, like I have a master's in science. Like I don't really know what I'm doing here. So just having the Ars Nova name to back me, I think just gave me a lot of confidence. And getting to premiere the show there was just so exciting. And they have one of the best small theaters in New York. I would love to do the show there again. So yeah, it was really great. And I got to make a lot of friends and we still keep in touch. And I'd love to, go back someday as an alum and, hopefully be uber successful and donate all my money there. So that would be great.
You see, I see how you have everything already planned out. Yes. Like different pathways. Every pathway has like all the steps required.
Which can be good and bad. But I find that like so much of work in the art is having to do just sweat equity, like just having to do work that nobody's expecting a deadline on, nobody's paying you for. It's just all internal motivation. And I have to believe every step of the way and the goal at the end in order to motivate to do it. Otherwise I won't do it. So a lot of my friends make fun of me. Like every time I write a screenplay, I'm like, this is going to win an Oscar. And like, I know in the back of my head, it's not, but if I don't believe that, I won't be able to sit down to write it. I read this study once. This is the scientist in me, but I read this study once about how when people get dopamine from like gambling, for example, the dopamine rush actually comes when they place the bet, not when they win. So the scientists posit that a lot of motivation and what gets people to do things is anticipation, not actually reward. Like the dopamine that you get when you place a bet is just as high, if not higher, than actually winning in like a hand of poker. So I try to kind of like backlog my dopamine and get excited about projects. And even if they don't turn out, like the worst thing is you just ended up where you already were. It's like asking someone on a date at a bar, like what's the worst that can happen? So like, yeah, I'm going to imagine every single step because that's what helps me. I get disappointed all the time, which is the downside, but I'd rather be an optimist.
Yeah, that's a good practice. That's the good way to describe it scientifically. I was kind of doing it like naturally, but I never thought of it this way. If I don't get excited about something, I just don't want to do it at all.
I feel the same.
It gives you like initial energy. Yeah.
Yes. You
mentioned Oscar, so let's move to your path. One of your pathway towards the Oscar. You've done a short film, Busted. It hasn't been released yet, but what can you tell us about this project?
Okay, sure. So whenever I was talking to people about, I had this crazy experience of I worked at a sperm bank while being a stand-up comedian, and I got fired for doing stand-up. And it happened in this really awful way where they made me watch my own videos, and then they fired me. And then I turned out to be fine, and I recovered from it, which is fun because I was, a type A control freak my whole life. And I was, thinking about what ways can I use this experience, because I'm a narcissist and I only write nonfiction. What ways can I use this experience with comedy? So, I had started Egg, I had started writing a pilot, I had started, talking about it in stand-up, and started talking to people more in the industry, like my manager and a couple of my friends who work down in LA. A lot of people were like, look, it's really hard to get someone to read a script or to come to a solo show that might not even be coming to your city. Have you thought about either writing a pilot and filming it or doing a short film as a proof of concept? And then I started thinking about two of my favorite movies, Whiplash and Shiva Baby, which had both started as short films. And then I watched those short films and I was like, okay, I feel like this is something I could maybe do. So I wrote a very bad first draft of, a 15-minute short film of just...
As they always are.
They always are. And I'm never afraid to do a horrible first draft. I have no dignity or shame. And I think that's something that can also, I tend to throw myself into things and then learn how to do them later, which I think has helped me a lot. So I wrote this draft, and I had gone to college with this amazing woman, Emily Everhard, who was a year above me. And we had sort of kept in touch, and she had gone to Columbia to get her MFA in screenwriting. And she had reached out to me 2 years prior saying, I'm looking to direct comedy stuff for my student reel if you ever have a project. And we tossed a few ideas around, but nothing really stuck. But I liked working with her, and, we sort of just kept in touch as friends. And then I remember it was January of last year, so almost a year ago, I sort of just out of the blue texted her, and I was like, can you read this 15-page draft of this random short that I wrote? And she had just won the Sundance Episodic Fellowship. So I was really excited to get her feedback. And instead of getting feedback, she was like, I'm going to direct this. Let's make this a short film. And she brought in an amazing producer, Lisa Cosrow, who had just wrapped on Spike Lee's last A24 movie. And she had sort of had we all sort of had this free summer before things were picking up in the fall. So we all worked together. We're all going to share a story by credit on the short, because we went through 30 drafts of the script. And we shot it in 3 days in July. We had an amazing cast. We have Judy Gold, who's a comedy legend. We have Emil, who's the newest SNL cast member. Me, of course. And it was just sort of distilling Egg into 15 minutes. And it all takes place over the 2 days that I got fired. And I really feel like I went to film school doing this. I feel like I got such an education. I learned screenwriting. I had never ever opened a screenwriting software before this. So I learned how to write screenplays, and now I understand through the entire production and post-production, this has totally changed how I'm going to write going forward, because now I understand what's feasible, what's not feasible, how when you change one little thing in a script, there's this crazy domino effect. And I got to act on camera for the first time, which was really fun and exciting, and also taught me so much. So yeah, it was definitely the best experience of my life. It was amazing. I procured the financing for it, so I got to be the executive producer also, which was fun to, kind of just be in this administrative role. But I'm so proud of it. We're hopefully going to have the final version, because the score and the sound design is just getting tweaked, ideally this week or next week. We've all been seeing before Christmas. So even if nothing ever happens with it, knock on wood, I'm still so proud of it, both acting in it and writing it and producing it. So yeah, it was a real education. And I feel like it just opened my eyes to this. Now I can't stop screenwriting, because I feel like it's when you go to your first open mic, now everything in the world could be a joke. So that's sort of how I feel now.
Yeah. Now you open a new path, screenwriting.
Yeah. And now I'm like, here are the 9 steps to take.
What would be screenwriting top? Yes. showrunner if it's for TV. Yeah, because you already have a show that you've written, right?
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to be paired with another showrunner who actually knows what they're doing and showrun my own show. I would like to be the new Fleabag. That would be my dream.
Yeah, I just was reading actually the screenplays. They released this edition as a book, and all the episodes from like the first season they have a Fleabag.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've read the pilot, but I haven't read anything else. I'll have to check that out.
I was reading it as I was watching the show. I was at that time I was taking some evening screenwriting classes myself, and yeah, she's great actually.
Yeah, I love her. Fleabag's like my favorite show of all time.
Yeah. Is there a particular story that, or like a moment that happened during the production of the movie that you'd like to point out? Maybe someone did something funny.
There was
stupid.
I mean, the first one that comes to mind is so there's a moment where I'm processing the sperm at the sperm bank, and the guy, hands me the cup, and my coworker barges in on us, and his knee kicks up, and the stunt is that I have to spill his sperm like on my shirt, but we couldn't all get the consistency of the sperm right because it was yogurt and egg whites. So the first time I did it, like it was too watery, and it all went in my eye. And so I'll send you a picture if you want to use it for behind the scenes. But there's this photo.
Put it as a thumb.
Yeah, there's this photo behind the scenes where I'm like this. There's someone blow drying my shirt. Someone's like hairspraying my hair. Someone's mixing a bowl of fake sperm, and we have to like redo the scene over. It was so funny because originally we were like, do we actually want to see the spill? But the spill's like a big part of the movie, and we sort of like that ends up being like a big problem for the character, is like dealing with this stained shirt over the course of her day because she doesn't have a change of clothes because she's an idiot. So yeah, trying to deal with like the stunt of that. We ended up getting it perfect the second time, and now we're gonna Foley in like a little like but it was like the perfect combination of disgusting and hilarious. That is, I like to think, my Venn diagram of comedy.
Yeah, this whole scene, I imagine it would be great material for BTS if someone was filming all that.
Yes, definitely. No, we had a BTS photographer, and we have that moment. I'll send it to you. It was great.
Yeah, I can only imagine how fun it could be to film something like that. I mean, it's fun to just watch you do the stand-up comedy about it, but then making a film and then the actual thing that you're doing, it's insane. Who was the designated sperm mixer?
Marissa, our prop designer. She had a little mixing bowl and like this tiny whisk. I felt like everyone, I mean, this is the only film I've ever been in, but the crew just was like trying not to laugh the whole time that we were filming. And so I felt that was it. Every time we cut, everyone like burst into laughter. So I felt like that was definitely a good sign.
Yeah, it's crazy. What's the biggest lesson that you learned as a comedian?
What matters is the resilience of it. Like everyone, I have seen some of the top comedians in the world, people with millions of fans, have horrible sets. Like it just happens. Sometimes the person who went up before you was bad or amazing and you can't recover. Sometimes people in the audience have had a bad day and you have no idea. Like every single room is different. And I think what separates good comedians from great comedians is that the great comedians have the willpower to like power through, because there is nothing like bombing. Like it's the worst feeling in the world. And then you have to sit backstage in the green room with the other comedians who you admire, who saw you bomb. And then the booker saw you bomb. And then everyone, when they leave and they pay your bill, they're all walking out and you have to like hide your face. It's just, or you leave, like it's the worst feeling. And I think the great comedians have to power through that. So I try to just remind myself of that, where I feel like so much of this is about willpower and deciding to go back. I'd say that's probably my biggest lesson, which I feel like can be applied to a lot of other places in life. And that also just, every time something really bad happens to you, eventually it will become good comedy, which helps me keep my head up when I'm having a bad day.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to think about it. Yeah, I agree that performing on stage, like stand-up or just performing on stage, it's terrifying, but also it is the best, one of the best lessons, because you get to know whether it works or not right away.
Yeah.
So
A
there's a
lot
good
of the
side of it.
jokes in Busted, like a lot of the just like the jokes that I've written on the page in Busted and in my pilot, I got to like try on stage and then see if they worked and then give them to other characters. It's like this great, because I don't have a writer's room. So I'm sort of able to workshop bits and then incorporate them. So I hope that as I write more things, I can continue to use that method, because it's been really awesome to like just have a quick barometer if something's funny or not.
Do you have like a trusted friend who you try the jokes with first and then go to public with it, or you just go to public with first brand new joke?
Usually I will either like voice memo one of my best comedian friends and like sort of get a gauge. And then I'll have friends, there are friends that you send things to where, no matter what you send, they're going to be like, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
And then there are friends who send things to where, they're going to be like, But there are open mic nights. There's like 100 open mics every night in New York. So if I have an idea that I'm excited about, or if I'm not booked on a gig that night, or I have a free night, usually I'll go to an open mic. And it's usually only comedians in the crowd, and you'll practice your new material. And, I'll read off a notebook and just see if something sticks. Usually I'll record my set and then I'll go back and, iterate on it. So, my like tightest 5 right now, like those have all been being workshopped for like a year or over a year, just again and again in front of different crowds.
Yeah. Do you use any of the latest technology to help your work, like AI tools or like, ChatGPT or other things?
I actually love ChatGPT, and I think a lot of comedians, I don't use it to like write material for me, unless there's like some weird, like I was trying to write a joke about I just couldn't think of a movie title that could be both a classic film everyone would know and also could pass for the title of porn. And I needed something for a joke that could have been both those things. So like I asked ChatGPT and it was like The Godfather, and I was like, perfect. Like things like that where I feel like, okay, that can kind of help me. But honestly, being a comedian means being your own manager, your own agent, and your own assistant, and your own lawyer. Like you kind of have to do, and your own director and producer and tour manager. I have to do so much. Every comedian has to do so much that I find that ChatGPT is helpful. I can put in my mailing list and be like, delete any duplicates and draft an email for X, Y, and Z. Or, so I get overwhelmed very easily. So sometimes I can put a whole email chain to ChatGPT and be like, what do I need to do here? I feel like it can just help me streamline the administrative side. I've never had it like write a joke for me, but I do find that it's helpful, especially now with write-ups for Busted for film festivals. Sometimes I'll word vomit into AI, and then I'll say at the end, like, what am I trying to say here? And it will tell me what I'm trying to say, and then I'll take that and put it in. I am also a horrible speller, so I find that AI generally helps me catch stuff that I'm like, whoa, I would have never known that was. Premiere is a word I can't spell, and certain, which I tend to use all the time. So AI helps me with that. I'm not worried about AI like coming for our jobs or trying to write screenplays. I don't like AI art, like the physical art. But I also think like, I don't know. I feel like you got to get with the times.
Yeah, I think my thoughts on it also evolve as it changes. Like when it was first starting, I mean, it wasn't first started. It was started like a long time ago, but 2016 I was kind of obsessed with it. 2015, and I thought, oh, it's gonna take over and everything, and now I don't think so. I think it just became like a new technology that people use it as a tool, or they use it as became
it's
even
like
more addicted.
It's like when the internet came out and professors were like, you can't use the internet. I think that people need to just take it at face value and adapt. And I've tried to like cheat the system with like stuff with AI, and like it can't cut corners the way that you hope that it can. Like I don't think if I had been in school, AI like would have like helped me cheat on tests or like write essays better. Like I feel like it is mostly helpful for like the stuff that we just don't want to do. But I'm not scared of it. I'm not scared of you, ChatGPT.
Oh, that's good. let's hope it will not chase you and nail you down. Yeah. Let's talk about the kind of like the different side of it. Not of it, but the different side. How do you recharge? Where do you get your fresh ideas? What are the practices that you have for yourself to get away from that craziness, from the New York City craziness, and focus on you?
I take that very seriously. I have a lot of friends that burn out because I feel like it's like riding a bike, and you have to do, like when you go to spin class, you have to have recovery so that you can have a sprint, so that you can have recovery. I've always worked in bursts. I'm the kind of person that would, like, if I was studying for a test or if I'm writing now, I'll do like really, really, really intense work for like 1 to 2 hours, and then my brain will sort of be fried. But I would much rather do that than sort of putz away for like 9 or 10 hours on something. So I really value efficiency and like doing something super intensely and then being done. So I guess the way that I will normally recharge is I have pretty late nights because of stand-up. Like I can get shows. I assume any day I will get booked on a show at least until midnight. Like that's sort of the hours that I have to be available. So I can never sleep right after a show because my adrenaline's always really high. So I have to like give myself time to like eat a little ice cream and wind down and watch a TV show. And I usually will like listen to an audiobook on sleep timer, like as I go to bed to like read me to sleep. And then in the morning, I try to not do like anything on them. I don't touch my computer. I like sit here and I have my like cell lamp, and then I read at least like 40 pages of a book. I'm always reading like a literary fiction book. And that sort of helps me start the day and feel like I'm sort of feeding my brain. And then I'll try to be as insanely productive as I possibly can in shortest amount of time possible, and then relax again. But I don't like feeling like my days are bleeding into each other because I'm not sleeping enough or I'm not getting breaks. Like even last night, I didn't sleep very well because my boyfriend was snoring, and I feel like yesterday never ended. I feel like I'm just in a continuation of today, and I hate that feeling because I feel like I can't start fresh. So if I got any message to creatives out there, like no one's going to reward you for working 24 hours a day, like busting your ass all the time. It's only going to burn you out. It's like running a marathon. Like you have to be gentle with yourself, especially when you're doing something creative. Like I can't be creative if I'm underslept and I'm hungry and I'm sore and I'm not comfortable. Like I feel like I'm sort of babysitting myself a lot of the time. But I just don't think, I mean, maybe people aren't like this in LA, but in New York, I feel like working yourself to exhaustion is a status symbol. And I don't agree with that.
When my wife and I came to New York, it was her first time in New York. I told her, before we came actually to New York, I was practicing with her walking faster in LA, so she'll get used to the pace in New York, because it exactly like that in Los Angeles feels like slow motion. Everyone's like walking, and then in New York,
yeah. I mean, I love the intensity. I mean, one of the reasons I love New York and why I know I will never leave is because it's so hard to live here that everyone who lives here is actively choosing to be here. It's hard for them, and it's so competitive that everyone is like gifted and working their butt off. And when you're around those kinds of people, you also want to work your butt off. So I find that aspect of it really motivating. Like I usually write in coffee shops, and then, I see everyone around me, whether they're in tech or they're creative or they're studying, like everyone here is sort of intense, and I really thrive off of that. But I just make sure to then not get so drained that I can't do it again the next day. Everyone needs recovery days.
What are some of your favorite fiction books that you read?
I'm reading this right now, which I really like, Cleopatra and Frankenstein. Normally, I don't like books like that. You can see my little bookshelves here, if you can see. Oh, sorry, that's my.
Yeah, I cannot see the titles, but I see that they're books.
One of my favorite books this year, The Latecomer, is probably my favorite book I read in the last couple of years. It's about three triplets who are IVF who all hate each other. And I have a lot of sibling rivalry in my family, so I felt very seen. I feel like that's sort of a taboo topic. They're all growing up in private school in New York in the 90s, so I also felt very seen by that. So I loved that book. But I'm the biggest issues that I have when I'm big on Goodreads and I like reviewing books. I find that the biggest issue or the reason I don't give books a lot of stars is like either the plot is amazing, but the writing feels like young adult, or the writing's amazing, but I feel like there's no plot. And I love to have a book that's both like a very intense plot that makes me want to keep reading, and the writing is really smart and engaging and awesome.
I recently just joined Goodreads. I mean, I've been reading books all my life, but like I never wanted to join it, but then decided to try.
Follow me, Sarah Adelman on Goodreads. I leave some pretty scathing reviews to my 6 adoring followers.
Yeah, I used to, before that, I mean, there I don't usually leave like a long review. I leave like a brief review. I have like my personal journal where I write the books and
nice.
write something about the book or something that like a quote or something that stood out to me.
That's nice.
So then I can go back and check, oh, I read this book. Oh, that was about that. Oh, that's what I learned personally from it. Okay.
Oh, that's nice. Maybe I should start doing that. I'm more used to Goodreads that, like, you know, if people want a recommendation, I can like sort it by the number of stars. Be like, okay, these were like my 10 favorite books that I've ever read. Or it's just a way to like categorize them, which I'm sounding very sciencey right now. But I think that's why I like it.
Yeah. I like the way that I choose books is like not connected to the apps. It's more like, in a sense, I don't know, connected to the universe in some sense. I need to have at least 3 different people talking about this book. One person of influence who I admire, one person maybe like a friend or a family member, and like third random person out of nowhere. If they all talk about this book, then I have a higher chance of reading it.
Interesting. I find that no one I know reads the way I read, or no one I know is always reading a book. I feel like people I know read a couple books a year, but every time I finish a book, like I go to the bookstore that day to get my new book, and I don't let myself go to the bookstore until I've like finished the book. It's like a fun ritual that I have.
That's a good one.
So, yeah. So I find that I don't really have anyone to talk to about books, so I tend to not get that much word of mouth. And people find out books a lot from the internet, but I find that the literary tastes of TikTok are not for me. So I tend to usually I follow a lot of like book blogs, and I'll read a lot of book reviews. And then I also will there are a lot of great local bookstores in New York that all have staff picks, like sections. And everyone will have written like a little blurb about what they like about the book. So that's usually how I pick out what I'm going to read.
Yeah, I love just going to bookstores with my wife. We're going and like just exploring things that resonate with us, and just feel the vibe. You know, I feel like you feel smarter when you go to a bookstore. For some reason.
Well, what I do is so annoying. I'm like, whenever I'm with my boyfriend, I'm like, I read that one and that one and that one and that one and that one, and this is what I thought of all of them. Which I don't think other people appreciate that.
Yeah, especially in LA, I don't think a lot of people read as much, at least in some of my circles, except for the screenwriters and the directors. Although there are a lot of book clubs and people actually do read, and it's kind of like a thing in LA. There are like book clubs that part of a bookstore. There's also individual like book clubs that like I have a few friends who have book club.
Oh, that's cool.
But I'm not sure that I'm like a book club type of person, because I just like to read it for myself and maybe talk about it, but like, because I don't like to have the assigned book to read, because I'm very specific about books that I choose.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I also, I'm very easily influenced by other people's opinions. And I find that like, if I'm in a book club and I don't talk first, I'll sort of just start maybe feeling the way everyone else felt about the book. And I would rather read at my own pace. I also tend to read faster, and like I don't want to wait until everyone else finishes the book and then I've forgotten it and then we're all talking about it. I feel like I'm bragging about how much I read, which I think is very unoriginal. But I didn't
Very
read for a very long time.
New Yorker of you.
I only picked up reading like during grad school. I felt like I hadn't read for pleasure in 10 years. The school had just been so intense. But yeah, I'm happy to be back with it.
All right. Well, let's move on from books to films. This is the question I usually ask to kind of get a sense of where people at. Feature films versus TV shows. Which one do you think is better as a job, maybe as an actor, actor path? And also, what do you think is better as a viewer, like personally?
Interesting. I mean, as a viewer, I love stability. And when you find a show that you like see has a bunch of seasons and you see that you can binge it, I would probably be more likely to watch that than a movie just because I get excited about like getting to go on that journey. I think that's the same reason I read novels or short stories. Like I like to really get invested and follow a character. Career-wise, I haven't worked in TV or film, so I don't think I would have a very educated opinion. Both seem to be great. I also feel like they're blending into each other a lot more now. I grew up going to the movie theater, so like that hasn't really been a big part of my life, but I do. But it seems like with Barbie and Oppenheimer and now Wicked, it seems like the movie theater is really coming back. So I think that's really, yes, I feel like that's really exciting for people. I prefer watching movies like at home, kind of for the same reason. I don't really like book club. Like I kind of wanted to just be my own thing. I also hate wearing my glasses, so I don't like going to the movie theater. I want to have like my laptop like on my chest with the screen in my face. Like that's how I like to, and I want to be fully horizontal. That's how I like watching movies. I feel like everything now seems to be TV. Maybe there's more money there, or it's cheaper to make. I don't know. I would love the chance to be in a writer's room, though, and be able to bounce ideas off people. I find that, when I'm just like at a diner, a 24-hour diner in the middle of the night with my comedian friends, we're all just like, you get into that zone where everyone's just being so funny. Like, I would love to do that professionally. That would be amazing.
Yeah. What do you think about Apple Vision Pro? Have you tried it yet?
No, I get really car sick and seasick, so I think it would make me extremely, extremely nauseous. But no, I don't really have any. I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to that kind of stuff. I don't have a lot of I don't have any smart tech. Like I don't have an Alexa or like a Fitbit or anything like that. I use my speedometer on my iPhone to track my steps. But other than that, I tend to be a very late adapter for that kind of stuff. Like I never had an Apple Watch or anything like that. So I don't think I would like the Vision Pro. I would rather sit in the grass in the real world.
The reason I mention it is you said I like to sit with laptop in my face, and this is pretty much
interesting.
In your face.
I don't think, because I don't like going to the IMAX because that also kind of makes me car sick. So no, I don't think I would like it. But I can see what you mean. Maybe one day, if I take a Dramamine or a motion sickness pill.
Well, you know about it. You know everything about it, I guess.
Yeah.
The next question is the question I ask everyone who comes to my podcast, and this question is meant to challenge your creativity a little bit, and also maybe give a good advice for the world. So here it goes. If you were an extraterrestrial from a perfect world where everything is in harmony, and now you come to our world with all of its issues, what would be the one thing that you'd fix?
I think if I could change anything, I would have everyone sleep 9 hours a night. I think that would change the world. I think that would be the easiest fix to change the world.
I can see how it, yeah, definitely. Sleep is
I think
important.
It would make, people don't understand the power of sleep. I think it would reduce illness. I think it would make everyone happier. I think every relationship, friendship, marriage, child-parent relationship would improve. Sleep just makes you, when you're underslept, you're just irritable. It's like you've decided to have a bad day. And I feel like if everyone, it was illegal to sleep under 8 hours a night, I just feel like the world would be better. It's a small fix, but yeah, that'd be great.
You would think so. It is a small fix, but yeah, wouldn't it be amazing if everyone slept 9 hours? Yeah, that's crazy. And it's funny to hear it from a person from New York, city that never sleeps.
I know. No, I'm sleeping. I'm sleeping here.
Yeah. Obsession of the week. This is the question I ask where if there is something that you've been obsessed this past week, something, anything. It could be as small as a brand of a toilet paper, or it could be a book or a movie or an experience.
Well, I said I'm very old-fashioned, so I've been using this hot water bottle.
Oh, nice.
Like the 1900s. Because I woke up with a crick in my neck the other day. This is like another thing AI can't fix, you know? There's nothing like just pretending you're like a Victorian woman with tuberculosis and you're using a hot water bottle. Like I love my little things like that. So I would say this is good for the New York winter. And it just makes me feel very chic.
I have one too, purple.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah. Those things actually popular in Russia, you know, or like just...
I'm sure.
Yeah, especially for heating purposes in St. Petersburg when it was like cold winter, minus 25 Celsius, which is probably the same minus in Fahrenheit, because there's like a point in Celsius and Fahrenheit where they're like the same. Yeah. And it was keeping me warm. I just put it under my blanket as an extra heater.
Oh, nice. That's fun. I'll have to try that.
Definitely. New York can get very cold. I mean, even Los Angeles, but I cannot complain in Los Angeles how cold it is. Even though I have like a heater on right now. Because right now we have like minus 50, minus 47 at night and like about 50 to 60 during the day. Yeah. Well, Sarah, is there anything else that you'd like to add? Anything that I missed? Anything to promote? Well, we know that your tour is coming.
Come see me on tour. Coming to Los Angeles February 8th at Lyric Hyperion. Please come. I don't know anyone who lives there, so I need every single person listening to this to come. Yes, you can sign up for my mailing list at my website or my Instagram bio. That's mostly it. But this was so fun, Konstantin. Thank you for having me. You're an amazing interviewer. You ask great questions.
Thank you, Sarah.